Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. My guest today has nearly 20 years with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Florida Network Realty. He is beloved by his agent. Agents he supports, as several guests on the show have simply bragged about him. When he isn't working with one of his agents, you can find him playing the drums, jumping in the pool with his family, as that's very important to him. His core values are family, authenticity, and unmatched support for his agents he leads. Let's welcome the highly respected broker from the Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Florida Network Realty, Josh Cohen.
Hey, Tracy.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for reaching out and having me on.
I appreciate you. You fly under the radar, but like I said, we've had some of your the agents that work with you brag about you, and I said, man, you guys really love this guy. I got to have him on.
I appreciate that.
Yes, there was quite the accolades. I want to dig in a little bit of your a little bit of your background, through real estate, and then obviously getting into leadership, and then we'll dig into some of the, challenges of today.
Sure.
And of course, you've been in it 20 years, so you've dealt with multiple challenges, as I've been in this mortgage business 19 years. Okay. So we all went through the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, time frame and having to work through that. And now, we've kind of got a little spin of that. I don't think it's as bad today as it was then, because we're still moving houses. It's not foreclosures and doom and gloom and all that house price drive. So,
yeah. I sold a lot of homes during that time period because I was one of those REO agents for a while. So
yeah,
I did a lot of that.
Well, that's so interesting, because many of the successful agents that I've had on that have been through that time period, mm-hmm. they all adapted quickly to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. No, I was kind of the agent that became the short sale expert by default, and
mm-hmm. I
was working out of the Berkshire Ponte Vedra office, and I had so many agents that were getting these short sale listings, and they were like, Josh, what's this short sale thing? You've closed a couple of them. Can you co-list it with me and help me out?
Right.
So I was helping them through a lot of them. And then, with all that, I ended up kind of doing a lot of BPOs and helping a lot of outsourcers and lenders with their distressed properties, and then started eventually listing those properties and helping the company with that as well.
Isn't it amazing how if you're just getting out and understanding what's in front of you, you dove into it. It sounds like it didn't, I'm sure it was like, oh my God, what am I getting into? But you drove through it, right? And and because you were on the cutting edge, you were then considered an expert. But really, is anybody really an expert at it?
Well, the market's a living, breathing thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think good agents will find a way to adapt and thrive in any market condition. And at that time, home prices were plummeting, inventory was rising. You would go into some neighborhoods in town, like a Marshland and Country Club, there'd be like 20 months of inventory.
Wow.
So, it was a very different market back then. But yeah, the bank-owned properties, maintaining them, making sure the grass was cut, the bills, the utilities were paid. I did that, and then eventually sold the property. And talk about multiple offers. During COVID, there were so many multiple offer situations. Back then, we'd have 30, 40 offers on properties
because they felt the value dropped so much. It was a steal.
Oh,
but then getting one of those offers approved by the bank who owned it.
Yeah. And having to make sure that you present every one of those offers clearly and transparently. And there's, it was a lot of work. I had a team basically before team was a thing. But it was a lot of fun, and
mm-hmm.
I learned a lot, so I enjoyed that.
There's something out there. I've been talking with people recently. They use the analogy or comparison of this situation today to back then, and that is we have so many loans that are sub 4% out there. Mm-hmm. People are not moving because of that, where I think we went for years there. People were like, oh, the interest rate's 3.5%. And they were just moving neighborhoods and that sort of thing. And now they're like, I've got a 3% loan now. I'm not going to go and buy a new house and take on twice the percent and even a higher price point, even though they have equity in their home when they sell it. But the assumable loan area, and I'll kind of throwing this out there because we're kind of on this topic. See if you've had any experience recently with it. But these VAs and FHA loans that are out there, these servicers that are servicing are in charge of them. If someone wants to assume it, that's who's in charge, not a loan officer like me.
Right.
They're in charge of that. And these servicers are going to start to catch on and get better at it as they did in the REO property exchange
Yes.
Yeah.
They should. We do some assumptions, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to reach out to the servicer really in advance, almost like you would if you were in a distressed situation like a short sale. You got to reach out to your servicer and let them know what's going on, because every bank handles that differently. They have a separate department. They don't always talk well together. So you really want to, reach out. And if you're an agent negotiating a deal on an assumption, you really want to have a strong loan approval period, generally 60 days, sometimes longer. Every now and then you'll have one that closes in less than 30 days, but it takes a while to do an assumption.
Yeah.
And they're slowly coming back. But
Well, I have been enlightened, and I'd gladly introduce this to help you. There's a gentleman, Stacy Blair. He owns a company called Point Right, and what they're doing, his experience is working in the operations department in these service areas. Obviously, his experience is they know they only maybe have a couple people working in there, and they probably only did it part-time because no one was assuming loans before. Now it's becoming more. So he is actually working because of the reason why it takes so long is because the paperwork that the seller has to fill out, the buyer has to get approved, and there's this whole thing. He actually, I like to use the analogy, it's like paying that company, get your passport done real quick.
he kind of facilitates the whole thing.
He facilitates it because he knows what paperwork needs, where signatures are needed. So hopefully expediting some of these to more like 30 to 45 days versus 90 or more days that they say. I do want to take just a moment to get my sponsor in here.
Absolutely.
Remy Realty, as you got anyone watching the show, Remy Graphics, should I say Remy, there is Remy Realty, there is Remy Graphics, and she does this nice logo. Josh has got one of these in his bag there. They will do one-offs. So you want to personalize this for a buyer. You don't have to order a dozen of them. You can order one or two. And she does other laser engraved products. She just does these mugs for me. Go to remygraphics.com, and see the other products there. But like I said, they're local here in Nassau County, and like I said, you can get them, probably within just a few days if she's got the items in stock.
Remy Graphics, if you're watching, if you want to do a lunch and learn in the office, just reach out.
Okay, well I'll let her know.
We'll have some fun today, Tracy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Look, I'd like to kick off the show, give everyone a little background on you. Where are you from?
I'm originally from the Northern Virginia area, right outside Washington, D.C.
I've treaded that path. I lived in Centerville for most of the 90s, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Annandale, went to Falls Church High School, and moved to Florida in 2001. Into Jacksonville. So I still have friends up there, enjoy visiting. Florida's now my home.
Yeah. So. That is my aunt's lived in Springfield since the early 60s, when Jefferson Science and Tech went to a magnet school, if you would call it that. That she opened that as the magnet school as biology, but obviously she's now retired. But yeah,
it's a beautiful area. I miss it sometimes. I miss the seasons and the snow. And
that's
some of that.
Well, what's so great about Northern Virginia? It's such it's not that long. You can get to the beach. Right. You can get to the mountains in just a very short ride. You get up into Pennsylvania, Gettysburg, whatever. You've got Williamsburg.
Baltimore.
Hop on a train, take it right up the coast. Yeah.
And there's good public transportation too. I mean, the metro and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So, what introduces you to real estate? Where do you?
So when I moved down here, I was kind of in the pretty much whatever you could think of in the food and beverage restaurant industry. That's what I was doing. I mean, I started working as like a line cook when I was 15. So that was kind of like my, I started working very early on, working behind the, in the kitchen, back of the house, eventually bartender, server, manager, all that kind of stuff. Was working in the hotel business when I came down, had a job at a really big hotel here in Ponte Vedra Beach, and was, did all kinds of things there in food and beverage, and just saw the development going on in real estate. It was always something that I wanted to do. My dad was in sales, and so just kind of came down here. Was kind of in was in a transition period, I guess you can say. And so I decided just to take the leap and get my license. And I joined. We were Prudential at the time, so I joined the company. I got my license in 2003. I joined the company in 2004.
Was there somebody you met in the restaurant or something that said real estate, or how does it actually?
No, I mean, I did encounter a lot of people that were moving there, because they were building a house, or because at that time there was no Nocatee, there was, Ponte Vedra was kind of sleepy. It was kind of quiet, believe it or not. It was just, I always wanted to get into sales. I enjoyed relationships and people. And I was doing really well in the restaurant business, but wanted to do something different. And I was living in Ponte Vedra Beach at the time, so I just took the leap and got in the business and really just embraced it.
So that first year, were you still kind of doing some work in the restaurant to get some cash
Yep.
flow? And how do you
Yes.
break into the
So I
business?
worked at nights basically. Like I was waiting tables in a fine dining restaurant, and believe it or not, I actually use that to my benefit. I sold several properties to some pretty wealthy clients that were there,
Right.
and I was doing really well. I worked in this kind of fancy steak restaurant, and expensive bottles of wine and all that. And so, but I was working floor during the day. Doing open houses on the weekends, really trying to get my business off the ground. And my goal was to bridge the gap, to eventually say goodbye to the restaurant business and eventually get into to real estate full time,
So,
which I did.
all right. So we're talking 20 years ago. Social media doesn't exist at
Right.
this point. I mean, from a marketing standpoint, was the location, was the walk-ins, I mean, a good part of you introducing yourself to people? Obviously, you're in the restaurant, so you're interchanging there a little bit of what you're doing. But what are you doing to let people know?
A lot
Josh
of
is
open
in.
houses, a lot of open houses, friends, network, family, networking, that kind of thing. You get into circles of friends and things like that. But I did a lot of open houses. I remember one time during TPC, I was working floor, and I had someone come in who was traveling with Phil Mickelson, and they were part of Barclays Bank. They're like, they may still be his sponsor, but they were
Yeah, I
his sponsor
remember.
at the
Yeah, you
time.
used to wear the hats all the
So
time.
they're a bank from Ireland, and there was a bunch of Irish guys there. And one guy walked in, he's like, just tell me about this place, the Plantation. And I'm like, here I am, this young, hungry
There you go.
agent, and I'm like,
Way to
man,
kick
here
off.
I go, And I'd already closed a couple deals. But anyway, I helped him out and a bunch of his golf buddies and stuff too, And so you kind of like, if you work hard and you're really good at follow up, and you tell people that you show people you're truly going to hustle for them, you're going to be there for them. You have the, if you don't have the answer, you're going to find out. They can feel that. And so
Right.
they will refer you. And so, like most agents, referrals are your bread and butter. You just work hard and really try to prove your worth.
Well, I mean, it's one of the words and you use in your bio, authenticity. And it was something I was just watching the news and comments, even on the politics, on the politicians, is the sense of our authenticity of what you're doing, what you're saying, your actions, your body language, and so forth is probably something you teach today, or make sure it's
Absolutely. A lot of agents, they see other agents and maybe they want to be like them or try to be like them. You have to find your voice. You have to find out who you are. And that's one of the things that I always like. We might be jumping ahead here, but one of the things that I always like talk about when I'm getting ready to meet with an agent that I'm coaching, whether I hired them or whatever, is what do you want to accomplish from it? Like, what do you want this business to be? Like, why are you doing this? What is your why? Because some agents are really working to have more personal time. They're a top producer and they want more personal time with their grandkids or whatever. But yeah, you have to be authentic. You have to be yourself. You can't be like somebody else. People see that. If you're not being real, they will feel that.
What's your why? Is I hate that question.
I know. It's kind of cliche. It's kind of
My why is I'm gonna tell you, here's my why. Money allows for freedom.
Sure. Yeah. We all want to
Yeah.
make money in this business,
Right,
right? But
right.
how you do it matters.
Yeah.
Like your words matter. Your vocabulary, your energy. You have to be intentional with your energy, whatever that is for you. Like for me, it's like you brought up earlier, music and playing drums. I've done that almost my whole life. That's like my weekend therapy. If I don't have that, I'm not as strong of a husband, a father, or a leader. So I need that. So some agents, they just want all real estate all the time, all the time. Well, what is it that you like outside of real estate that helps you be that better person? So you have to kind of like dig in and find out like, why are you doing this? Maybe the way I described it's kind of like not the best way, but you have to be true to yourself and find out why.
Well, this is going to be a chapter in my book. After all these interviews, the actions that you were listening to, Carrie Carpenter with Keller Williams comes to mind. Just how she runs her business, and she started running her business like a business right from get go. But part of being that business is all those being authentic, the follow up, all those things where, yeah, you could run out there and try to get a new deal every day. Who can I turn and get a sale in the next 30, 60 days? But really, would you agree to become truly successful in this, in the real estate business, you've got to be doing actions that may not bear fruit for years.
100%. You have to have that commitment to delay gratification in real estate. It takes time. You have to work at people's pace. you could chase those cold leads, working expired listings, working for sale by owners, cold calling. We have agents that do that, but it's a supplement. The core of your business is always going to be your relationships. The quality of your business is tied to the quality of your relationships generally. And so there's lots of ways you can do it, but yeah, you have to lean in and really just embrace those relationships.
So go back to the first year. So were these golfers part of the first year in the business?
Some friends, family, friends of friends, open houses. I converted a lot of, clients, long-term clients to open houses. I actually, my first year, I wasn't scared, right? So I would call for sale by owners. And back then, inventory, we're talking in 04 and then in 05, inventory was starting to rise. I mean, I've been in a couple different market cycles. Right?
Yeah.
So for sale, there wasn't a lot of marketing. Right now, for sale by owners have all these platforms and Zillow and everything else. Right. But back then, they really didn't have much. A flyer box.
Yeah. Sign in the yard.
Yeah. So I called a lot of them, and I would just be like, look, I know you're trying to sell your house by owner, and that's great. But if you ever decide to make a change, and you're interviewing realtors, I'm in the area. I was just showing property at this, couple streets down. I'm here to help you. Here's my marketing plan, by the way, in case you're interested. Things like that. I wouldn't sell them. I would just kind of side coach them. I'm here to help you. Maybe it's an older home and they weren't aware of the lead-based paint disclosure. Or they weren't aware, it's good to have an open house sign-in sheet. It's good to do open houses. Here's why. Have those conversations with them.
Right.
And I would just kind of follow up. I would have a little spreadsheet and I would just kind of follow up. And that brought me a lot of listings. And sometimes one of those relationships would be 4 or 5 other deals because they referred me.
Yeah. What are some tips that you give? I don't know. You can kind of give an idea of what the for sale by owner market is right now compared to that time, but I think how agents like how you approached it. Did you have someone that mentored you on that, or is this something that kind of came naturally with your demeanor on how to softly approach?
So we have a lot of training and support for agents, right? At the time, we had a training program called the Incubator, is what it was called, and so part of that training was prospecting and for sale by owners. And so most agents don't do that because it's not fun. It takes a long time. You have to have that commitment to delay gratification. So I just kind of put myself out there. Take risks, essentially, right? I mean, most agents don't do some of those things because it's uncomfortable. And so I learned very early on in this business, okay, this business is pretty uncomfortable all the time. So I'm going to find a way to just be uncomfortable and still make it happen.
So, because I think your first, you're not necessarily, I'm calling it the first year, but when you no longer feel you're a rookie, you're now moving on, and you've got some swagger because you've got some deals under your belt. So whether that's 1 year, 2 or 3 years, whatever that, walk us through what your attitude was through your schedule for the day, because you're working initially at night, waiting tables. Are you someone who shows up at the office at 7:30 in the morning? What was your?
Sometimes, definitely. Get there early. You want to be. Have a to-do list every day. Have a list of things you want to accomplish. There's working. In your business, which is, the showing property and the scheduling the inspections and all that. Then there's the working on your business, which is all those prospecting things. And I mean, every morning it's like, one of the things I love about this business is it's like a new day. What are you going to do today? What are you going to accomplish? Are you going to look yourself in the mirror and, know that you gave it a 10 effort that day? So for me, that was, taking a look at the hot sheet. Are there some properties that expired near where I live? Because at the time I was living in Mandarin. So I've really kind of worked that market quite a bit. I live out in St. Johns County now. I've kind of lived in different parts of Jacksonville, but just really kind of going after making listings a priority, because if you have the listings, generally you have the buyers as well. They eventually come with it,
right.
That spin-off. So I really focused a lot on trying to get listings.
Yeah.
That was kind of my main focus.
Which is the market we're in now.
Correct.
So you're leading, I would imagine.
Buyers are great too. I think a lot of agents are leaving buyers out because they don't want to talk about this buyer agreement thing. So they're kind of like, I'm just going to focus on listings. Okay, great, more buyers for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's so common. I didn't even think about it, but that's exactly true. I hear a lot of agents going, I want more listings, which is great. Listers last, right? That's the phrase.
The holy grail of the business.
You got all these traps out there, and your job is to sit back and market versus actually going and showing, because there are some buyers that are driving agents crazy right now. Would you agree that deals today versus say 2 years ago, they got a little more fur on them? so to speak?
I would say there's a little more intensity out there. You know, buyers generally, it's more of a reactive process. You're reacting all the time. And for agents that have, you know, families and kids, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's weekend time. Whereas as listing, when you're on the listing side, generally it's more of a proactive process. You leverage your time. You know, you could be at the gym and you're responding to, yes, I'm offering buyer broker compensation. Here's the compensation form. You know, done.
Right.
Whereas as a buyer's agent, it's more reactive. It takes more time, but you can't leave them out because, man, they need you right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. The next topic I put on there, challenges. You've obviously, you were all the way through a market where you started, it ramped up and got really hot. Then it got really cold very quickly.
Yeah, I had some sellers that had a couple houses for sale in the same neighborhood because they were new construction flippers kind of thing. Do you remember that? Which was dicey, but I had some people that were doing that. But yeah, I wrote it up and then wrote it down.
Yeah,
pretty hard. Yeah.
So now being in leadership and following these, obviously this past, I don't know if we could say the past year, we knew this settlement was coming through. There was going to be changes, what the changes were going to be. I think some of the water cooler talk probably wasn't so positive with a lot of agents, where other agents obviously were looking for the glass half full versus half empty. What are you seeing as the biggest challenges right now for real estate agents internally, not necessarily the external things coming from NAR and doing the buyer broker agreement, but almost like in a psychological standpoint, and you as a leader, how you lead them through that?
Well, there's so many things, right?
Yeah.
There's so many challenges. Every deal is like it's a new chapter in a book.
Yeah.
Yes. And buyer agreements, I mean, to be honest, Tracy, Berkshire Hathaway, we offer single agency, so we've always used buyer agreements. So that's not new for us. We actually have our own buyer agreement. We know Florida Realtors has their own buyer agreement. We actually have our own, which we've always had. And we've always made that part of our DNA, part of our coaching to our agents. So that's
was it required for did you require every agent to do it, or was it optional?
Well, you're required to make a written disclosure if you are a single agent, right?
Okay.
Some agents maybe opted not to be a single agent because maybe it was an investor that they didn't know or something like that. I mean, once you showed the property back in the day without a written agreement, you were perceived as a transaction broker, right? So we had some agents that took that position. That was okay. But this is how we taught it. This is how you're supposed to do it, right? So, but I mean, gosh, challenges today, there's so many of them. I think for number one, agents need to not let the media kind of bring them down because there's so much bad media out there about this. I think the challenge is being focused. You have to be focused on your relationships, focused on what you're going to do. Good agents are going to find a path forward on every transaction, on every market condition, because markets ebb and flow, right? They're cyclical. And I think right now the challenge is, making sure that you're willing to slow down and have a conversation with the buyer about the expectations, the compensation, the representation, how long it's going to be. It's required now. A lot of agents, I think, didn't do buyer agreements, even though they maybe had them, because they take so much time, but it actually saves time in the long run because you're actually setting the expectations with the buyer. You're having meaningful conversations early on. So I think leaning into these changes and embracing them is and not fighting it, that's a big challenge. And that's a mindset thing for a lot of people right now. You just have to lean in and be, going back to energy, not be negative about it. Because if you're negative about it, you're not going to attract.
Right.
People don't want to work with negative people.
It makes me, just listening to you talk there, when I started my first 8 years were at Quicken Loans, and then I did a few more years in the Loan Depot call center. Doing mortgages over the phone, and what we knew, the longer you kept them on the line, the more you were more apt to get the deal, right? And we were doing a lot of refinancing at the time. It's really, the more time you talked with them, built the rapport. Would you agree that really agents who haven't been doing buyer broker agreements, this is really actually a great marketing opportunity? Show your value. The more they're engaged, you can tell they want to date you, right? That's been the analogy that's being
Sure.
used. And really, it's probably going to end up to being getting more referrals for you on the backside.
100%, Tracy. This takes me to the buyer consultation. You have to have a buyer consultation with the buyer. Now, it can be at Southern Grounds, it could be at Starbucks, it should be at your office if you have a brick and mortar. And I think, during the pandemic and COVID, so many agents were working from home. I don't need an office, that kind of thing, and all that's kind of coming back full circle now, because now you really need to, the best way to explain the process and talk about your buyer agreement, and not just your buyer agreement and the commission side, but all the things you're going to do for them. Like, commissions should be the last thing you talk about.
Yeah.
You're going to sit down and you're going to talk about, get to know each other, like ask questions, build that relationship. If you don't know them, a lot of times you might know them already or they were referred to you. But I think, having those conversations in the office is really important. Setting the expectations, and all that does is deepen the relationship. So therefore, they're going to trust you, because at the end of the day, whether you're working with a seller or a buyer, trust is everything.
Yeah.
Do they trust you? I mean, if a seller trusts you, they're not going to interview a bunch of realtors. They're going to hire you.
Yeah.
And that's going to be tied to your process, how you handle it. So many agents are, you're on the phone with a seller and they're asking you, oh yeah, so and so recommended you, yada yada yada. Before you come out, what's your commission? And so many agents are like, well, it's this. You haven't added any value yet.
Right.
Like, that's a great question, but let's have the appointment. I'd love to get to know you first, and then take a look at your house, get to know your property, show you my marketing plan, all the things I'm going to do for you. Then we'll talk about
how much work I'm going to have to put into this, because some are easier than others.
The same now applies to the buyer side. You need to sit down and talk about all the things you're going to do, like share stories, the wins, the deals that you closed that were tough. Here's how we got it done.
Yeah.
Here's my vendor list. Here's my mortgage. We have our own mortgage company, Prosperity Home Mortgage. So we have that, make that part of the conversation.
Right.
So sitting down, having a meaningful conversation, and taking the time to do that and show them your value, then at that point, you're ready to go transact. And then we could talk about compensation and all that stuff, which is the NAR requirements now.
Yeah. I think what happens when you're if you're in sales long enough, there's a lot of stuff in between. It becomes a routine. And I think one of the things that agents have done, I think I mentioned this in a video that I put out to my people, just explaining them straight out from me to consumers of what's going on right now, is we just got to a pace where things were just happening so fast. We just wanted to stick the sign in the yard and then grab the contract. And now, okay, schedule closing. Let's get and do all those actionable items versus the time to sit down and explain to them the process. And I've got, on my side, the mortgage side, there's people that we can do the whole transaction over text message. I send them the document. You got any questions? No problem. And they give you the greatest reviews. There's others have a ton of questions.
Right.
So you feel that out, and obviously you spend some more time, and obviously answering the question before they even ask they're like, oh my God, you're so great. I didn't even think about that, but it might eventually come. And I think the agents need to slow down a little bit, right?
You're exactly right. And there's probably some models out there, some business models, some brokerages, some agents that's just how they do it. We're not focused on relationships. We're only focused on the transaction. We'll meet them at the property, and then in the street, we'll talk about this buyer agreement and get it signed. To me, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
If that's how you want to run your business.
Well, it's not a long term. It's not a.
It's a short-term game.
Yeah.
For lack of a better analogy, the golf and real estate is the long game. Right? It's longevity. If you want to be in this business long term, you have to really lean into relationships. And so, these changes, if you can find a silver lining in all these NAR settlement changes, one of them is it's forcing you to have more quality conversation with your people.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. You should have been doing that anyway.
Yeah. 100%.
And some always did.
Yeah. No, I think that is the positive side of it is well, and I think that's why some agents might be getting out, because they're not comfortable with that conversation. I think there's some using her as an excuse.
Yeah.
They've kind of wanted to get out for a while. Now they're saying that's the reason, but
it's a tough business. It's not for everybody, but ultimately at the end of the day, this is the relationship business. It is not just a transaction. Now, if you think it's a transaction and that's how you want to run your business, okay, but it's going to be so much harder for you. It's going to be way more expensive, and you're going to have a lot of deals fall through because you're not explaining things. You don't have a process. So
you and I know have dealt with this situation. just use the term transaction. I get the call, what's your rate, right? They're not asking about, hey, do you have enough employees right now to handle my loan?
Right.
Because that should be a question every lender right now.
Right.
I'm sure you get calls, have gotten calls through 20 years. What is your commission? Or, they quickly go to how fast can you think you could sell it? They kind of put you on the spot right away and not giving you the opportunity just because they don't understand all those things that a real estate agent's going to do on a transaction.
Yeah.
They're just looking at the end game. How your coaching agents have for years? What are some ways that you take that person who's kind of asking those transactional questions into understanding the value of, hey, we need to sit down and actually work out some of these things?
Yeah, I mean, having a process, right? Being intentional. If you're an agent, you really should not, it's always good to have a phone interview with a seller before you're going to meet them, but you always want to ask a seller before you go on that appointment, what are the three things you're looking, if you can give me 2 or 3 things, what are you looking for in your realtor? Because a lot of times they've had a bad experience in the past. Maybe it's, I want an agent that, is a good communicator, because I always had to ask for updates, like what's going on.
Right.
So okay, communication is important to them. So I'm going to cater my marketing consultation to communication. That's number one. Last time my agent didn't do any open houses and didn't do any social media marketing. We've got some agents that are just making waves on social media. So they would make that part of their marketing plan, and they would bring in some reels and some things that they do and walkthrough videos and things like that. So asking those conversations, don't go on the appointment until you do that. Some agents get so excited and they don't ask those questions. So I think staying true to your process, pilots, when they're going to fly, if you're just boarding the most routine flight, Delta, Jacksonville to Atlanta, there's probably 12 of them a day.
Yes.
These guys are experienced. They're gonna flaps. They're working.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna go through all these different things. We're dealing with millions of dollars of people's money.
Right.
These are assets, and you're not supposed to wing it. What is your process?
Right. And the Delta flight may have some turbulence along the way. Next time might not. But someone buys the wrong house that ultimately they move into, and they're in the wrong area of town, and the schools aren't where they want them. Their expectations is much more devastating.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be true to your process. I think that's the coaching, and we have. I mean, obviously, I'm going to talk about Berkshire a little bit today, but we have so many playbooks and so many. Of course, I think you've had agents on from our company that have talked about Ninja. We've embraced Ninja quite a bit, and Ninja has a seller process, a buyer process, and we've leaned into that and made that part of our DNA as well. So we have playbooks, and we have checklists and all these things that the agents can use to help them.
So. That great segue into leadership. When do you start to, I think some people think it's like getting into management, right? Oh, I want to be a manager. Like do you want the headache of that or not? When does Berkshire reach out to you and say, hey, we need you to mentor some people? How does this transition?
So I had a team, right? And it was me. I had a couple buyer's agents. I had some property inspectors, because from 2009 to 2015, almost into 2016, I mainly did corporate relocation, corporate-owned properties, but my main focus was REO properties. We had some really big accounts. I managed those accounts for several years. 2013, I think I closed I closed 300 deals roughly in 2013. My average sales price was like $70,000.
Wow.
I was doing a lot of deals. I was doing a lot of cross sales with agents from all over, different brokerages and things like that. But I think in that time period, I had closed 1,300 deals. That's where that was going. But I was doing that, and then 2016, a lot of these REO accounts were pulling back, and they were doing more modifications, and things were pulling back a little bit. And that was really what I was focused on. And I was still servicing my business, my sphere as well. And then my wife and I got pregnant. My wife struggled with infertility, and we were kind of on that journey for a while. And then we finally, were able to have a baby.
Excellent.
And so life was changing. And so I was kind of thinking about making a change. And I was actually looking into starting my own brokerage. I was thinking about, I'm going to go out and do my own thing. And the owners of the company.
That sounds like that sounds like more It's like the kids coming. Now let's take on some more.
Maybe, but I was thinking about the future and building more wealth and really looking out for my family long term.
Right.
What can I do? I can be an agent. That was on the table. I can go start my own brokerage. And so the leaders of the company, Linda Shear and Christy Budnick, Linda Shear, who started Prudential Network Realty, and which eventually became Berkshire, they kind of tapped me and they were like, we know you're thinking about making a change, but we kind of think you'd be really good as a managing broker for one of our offices. We have one of our managing brokers is going to be retiring soon. And I'm like, I don't want to babysit a bunch of realtors. That's not what I want to do. And really, all I had done is close deals. But I had a lot of relationships there, and I had formed relationships with lots of agents from all different companies because I was doing deals with many of them. And I had agents tell me, you're the one REO guy that answers your phone. Because most of those REO agents never answer their phone. It was only email.
We'll get to you when we want to.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, if at all.
Yeah.
Everything was only email. So I would actually answer the phone and help them through. Like, it says I need to go to HomePath and make this offer. How do I do that? I would kind of walk them through it and help them out. So anyway, I had these good relationships there, and they were like, we think you should run this office. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I kind of thought about it. I talked to my wife. We kind of had the conversation, and I was like, all right, maybe this is the next step of my journey. The stability piece of it would be good. Maybe a little more time at home at nights and weekends and things like that. So let's give it a shot. So that's kind of how it started for me. That was 2016.
You mentioned something I think is very important in there to kind of just sidebar for a moment. Relationships with other agents. We hear the horror stories. Generally, people don't mention names because they just leave that out. But there's some agents out there that can be combative.
Sure.
And you've been in the business long enough. Explain a little bit of the benefit, because when you say relationships with other agents, were good or strong, whatever. I mean, how important has that been from your overall career in real estate to make friends with the agents that are even with other brokerages?
It's extremely important. I think you need to, you may have a buyer for their listing coming up. And so if you have a adversarial relationship with them, how's that going to work out? And it's a shame because as a managing broker with, over 100 agents that that are a part of my group, I hear it all the time, and I see the emails, I see the text messages, they share everything with me. You'll have agents that are trying to put a deal together, and then you see what the listing agent is saying to the other agent, and I'm like, man, if their seller knew how they were communicating to our agent who has a buyer for their property, that is a huge disservice. And a lot of times the seller doesn't even know that their agent is being like so adversarial, almost putting up this these unnecessary barriers that are all about them and their personality and their ego.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think understanding that ego is a part of our business, and then going back to sales 101, if you're dealing with a power personality, there's a lot of power personalities in real estate. If you have the buyer, you may need to kind of change your personality a little bit and ask the right questions, but make sure that they feel like they're in control, so you can kind of put that deal together.
Yeah,
I think that's important. But I think, never jumping all into business. If you're, talking to an agent, you're maintaining those relationships, like, how was your weekend? What'd you do this weekend? Like so many agents just like, okay, so I talked to the buyer and blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's slow down. How's your morning going? Is everything good? Because they maybe had a terrible night. They couldn't get their kid to sleep, or they had a flat tire or whatever. Talk about it, because that human stuff might make the deal a little better, which at the end of the day helps our clients, and therefore we all do more business, right?
Well, you used the word ego, and that's where I'm like, okay, hold on, why are you getting your ego? Are you, because of a whatever few $100,000 repair, or maybe you're asking them to drop the price a few $1,000s to compensate for that? Why is that how is that affecting you, but a couple pennies in your pocket, maybe because the percentage of the commission changes?
You're exactly right.
I mean, you're trying to close it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
had a conversation the other day, or yesterday actually, and it was an agent who had this opinion about this neighborhood, and they were like, well, because our agent was like, your listing, I'm trying to, I've got a buyer for it, we love it, but I can't comp it out. It seems high. It seems about $50,000-$60,000 high. And this agent had all these opinions about why this home is like these other homes, which of course were on this other side of the street that's all riverfront. And so, but she was just sharing her opinion, which everyone's entitled to their opinion, but maybe that's not the seller's opinion. Like, why don't you present it, and then we'll try to see if we can figure it out.
Right.
You know, instead of spending half a day now on your opinion.
Yeah.
Let's present the offer.
Well, as you get older and more mature, you start to realize other people have different perceptions. I mean, we see it on so many aspects of our life going on. And yeah, everyone has their opinion of that neighborhood, or there's their perception. Who has the facts? You know, the only facts we know is what's actually sold, right? So we're comping this out. Like, this is the highest property sold recently, and you're 50,000 over that.
Right. You're exactly right. Perception's important, and you want to respect their opinions. That's not what I'm saying. You don't want to be disrespectful about it, but at the end of the day, like, we want happy buyers and sellers, right? We want to try to put this thing together. So I think ego can be a thing sometimes. Some agents are getting cut down to size now because there's so many new regulations and changes that you have to adhere to. So, and that's one of the things that I think, with this NAR settlement is tough because, now we're making, there's so much now about compensation and not the client. And it should always be about the client.
Right.
And so I think a lot of agents now, they're just, they're having to kind of navigate that.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you change about the business if you could be, what's that character in the Marvel comics that has, you could change everything. What do you think that could be better? I mean, we just got off a topic of relationships between agents. Obviously, we want they need to be more collaborative, is the word that everyone likes to use. You got a buyer and you got a seller and you got a house in between, and you guys got to mediate this to success, right? I think that's obvious. But what are some things that if you could change in the overall real estate industry, what do you think that would be?
Oh my gosh. I would say the business itself is constantly changing and evolving, so, I mean, like, the change is constant. What would I change? I don't know. That's a hard one to answer. I think it'd be, maybe a little better if the state exam was a little harder, just a little bit, right? Because I do think what we're doing is serious business. Like, some agents are like, well, I do real estate part-time. I have a real job. This is a real job.
Yeah.
Real estate is a real job.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So if it's not a priority for you, then maybe think about letting the professionals handle it. But change is everything in this business. And that's the hard part is, and that kind of goes back, I think, maybe to the ego thing a little bit, like there's fixed mindset and there's growth mindset. You have to have a growth mindset in this business and understand that it's constantly changing. I mean, a couple months ago, everyone was freaking out about the FAR bar contracts, so we had to navigate that, which, is not a big deal. We have to work through it. Forms change, the contracts change. Now we have all the NAR settlement changes. MLS had gone through a data, NEFAR MLS went through a data conversion 6 months ago, a year ago. Your wife probably shared that. And there was all kinds of issues with that. It's always changing. Yeah. So,
Well, so one of the guests brought up a very good point, talking about you were talking about the entry, making the test a little more difficult, is really having requiring agents like appraisers have to do so many hours of like an apprenticeship type thing,
possibly,
to get them up to speed. Because I think again, my opinion is formed by interviewing over 200 top agents in the area. Some of the reasons why some of these agents fail so quickly, which doesn't do good for the it's not a great, it's one of the black eyes, if you want to call it, for real estate, because so many people do fail or don't renew after 2 years. They may have failed actually in the first 30 days and quit and gave up. But being matched with a great mentor, a great broker, whoever it is, it's going to guide them through those initial challenging times until they get some sales under their belt and get moving forward.
Yeah, it's very hard. To break into it, especially if you don't have a sphere and you're new to the area. very difficult. Say goodbye to weekends because you need to be doing open houses pretty much every weekend.
Yeah.
And then maybe some prospecting, some, working some, cold leads and expireds and for sale by owners and things like that, which might be really uncomfortable.
What do you love about the industry the most?
Oh my gosh. I love that, I love the people that I work with. I'm so grateful for the agents that I work with. I've got some really good people that I work with, and like my style of leadership, in the role that I have with my 2 offices, and now I have this regional role that I was promoted to recently, is just like the back of the wolf pack. Like I don't want to be, because you asked me like, what would you change? It's a loaded question. It's not up to me what changes. I think we all have these different stories, right? But like, I would say I love the people that I work with. I love our company. I love helping people. I love sharing the agents' testimonials and the wins, and sharing their listings on our Instagram page, and sharing their videos, the high fives, the ringing the bell, in the office at our sales meetings that we have every week, and we have good turnout for those. I love that every day is kind of like a reset to some degree. There's always a new challenge. There's always something new. I love that you get to be yourself.
Yeah, that's a great one right there.
Because you're not like working for, obviously our brand is very big, but our agents are not employees. Like you need to be you. People are attracted to you. Finding out who they are and then helping them orchestrate that, market that, things like that. That I enjoy.
I wrote down because I know I saw where and actually I was trying to look it up, but there's nowhere on your social media that I saw it somewhere that you got the promotion. It might have been when we first started talking weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then
I don't make a big deal out of that stuff because that's just not who I am.
But you're taking on a different challenge. So now you've got an office that you've been going to,
I have 2 offices.
2 offices that, you've been working with these people for a period of time, gotten to know them. Now they're asking you to take on how many more agents technically?
Well, I'm not taking on more agents. I'm basically, my regional role is helping coach the brokers, because we have some brokers. We had a couple brokers all retire at once. And so we had some new brokers come in, and so kind of helping them and coaching them to help to run their office.
All right, so how are you attacking that? Because again, talking to 200 plus agents, I've come to a conclusion. A good broker can make or break an agent. Some need brokers more than others. Some can just do it on their own, no matter who's in leadership. But
sure,
there's so many agents out there, again, that are falling out. But you being a regional and coaching other leaders, are you trying to create a culture, kind of duplicate what you're doing?
No.
How are you kind of attacking this initially anyway?
I mean, I'm approaching it the same way I would my agents, coaching them to find out like who they are, what's their story, what's their core value, why are they doing this? And then, because that's going to tell the story of their office, and that's going to help them build their office, right? When I first became a broker, I was nervous, of course. And I actually tried to be like other brokers. I was like, he's doing a really good job with recruiting, and his sales meetings are okay, and maybe I should try to be like him. Like, I never really leaned into my authenticity, and it's because I was so worried. Like, what if they don't like me? What if people leave?
Imposter syndrome, right? Is that what it's called?
Right.
Yeah.
And so finally, I was like, all right, screw it. I'm going to be myself, and if an agent leaves, oh well.
Right.
Once I kind of just said I'm going to be myself, this is who I am, then things started trying to happen. So helping these new brokers with that, but coaching them through the leadership side of things, just like I would an agent. My week is very, I'm a big time blocker. So, I have like a Monday motivational thing that I do. We have one-on-one coachings that I do with my agents. I time block those activities, and I try to coach them to do some time blocking, to be intentional, because, a good broker or a good agent, it's kind of a very similar thing. They're aligned in a way. Like if this business, you have to run it like a business. You have to be intentional. A lot of agents bounce around from transaction to transaction. They're on accident. You've got to be on purpose. These are ninja terms, but you have to be on purpose with your business. You have to have a plan every day. Wake up, here's the things I'm going to accomplish. So if you accomplish those things, then in the afternoon you can go be with your family, or go to the soccer game, or go to the networking event. That's going to eventually get you more deals because you're nurturing relationships, So really helping people be run it like a business, whether you're an agent or a broker, helping them through that. And then sometimes it's the personalities and the recruiting and the deal doctoring. There's some of that too, of course, helping them through some of those challenges.
What is something you're doing today? Maybe something you're, hopefully you think that these new brokers, if they're not already doing it, maybe something that's made you successful that you and I'm going to use you took from another broker. You're like, wow, I really like that. I'm going to do it. And then
so many things. I think making the sales meeting like a thing, making it good enough where agents want to show up.
Value. Yeah.
Adding value. We do, in my two offices, we do a hybrid meeting. We do in-person and Zoom. I do both. Not because agents don't want to come in the office, but I've got a lot of top producers like, Josh, I love you, but man, when you started doing that Zoom thing during COVID, I really like that. And I'm like, I want to make sure that if they're going to yoga or they're going to show property or whatever, they can still pitch their new listing. So I want to make sure they can chime into the meeting. But, making the sales meetings of value, always sending out a recap of your sales meeting, that day, letting them know what the agenda is in advance. Not like, hey, we're having a sales meeting on Tuesday. Everyone should show up. Well, what are you talking about?
Right.
What's the topic? What's it going to be about? We have special guests sometimes, but not often. Last week we talked about, what are the reasons why a seller should offer buyer broker compensation? The week before that, it was mastering the buyer agreement. So I really try to what does the group need? During COVID, multiple offers.
Do you rely on some of your top producers to fill in with some of the content at the sales meeting?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, we have agents that are really good at, social media. They might do some of that. That stuff is usually more lunch and learn. I really want it to be about the agent, not about me.
Right.
But the sales meeting is like that one little hour and a half or so where you get to kind of show your value and help them. Like my goal with the sales meeting is that they're going to take away one or two nuggets that they can apply to their business. A couple of years ago during the pandemic, it was multiple offers. How to do, what are some multiple offer strategies? How can we, go through that?
Right.
Now we've got rising inventory. I took some notes here. I think in Duval, Clay, St. Johns County, if you're looking at the most recent NEFAR statistics, got to quote NEFAR here, that's where I got the data, right? But I think months of supply, it's just about 4 months of supply, and inventory is up I think 80% year over year. So agents need help right now moving listings. I mean, getting listings is always something we're going to be focused on, but we need to move our inventory.
Right.
We need to make sure that every single listing has, a service providers list. Here's all the people that are servicing the HVAC, servicing the pool. You have a feature sheet attached to your listing. Making sure, of course, there's nothing about compensation in your listing. Talking about that too.
Yeah.
But trying to understand the energy, the flow of what's going on. What's the pulse of the office? What do the agents need right now? What do they need help with? If it's when rates went up 2 years ago and the business kind of slowed down right around the holidays, it got really sluggish. Okay, we need to make sure that everyone's in flow and they're doing open houses and they're visible in between their deals, social media. So then I would bring an agent in to do something about Instagram because I need to get some agents out there doing video. Because they're maybe taking a little bit of a back seat because it's a little sluggish right now. So the understanding that it's kind of a living, breathing thing. What do we need right now? It's like a wavelength almost.
Yeah. No, I think that is so vital. If someone's listening to this that's even not in real estate, I have been to so many sales meetings where they're unprepared. There's no value. There's not even an agenda for someone to go through. And I think when you're dealing with adults, treat them like adults. Their time is very important, and then especially I think in real estate, and you'd obviously agree with this because this is how if you're going to take them away from their time or have to have someone else drive their kid to school because they're going to make the sales meeting or whatever it is, because real estate agents have the ability to set their schedule, so to speak, but you're saying, hey, I need you to be here at this time, and they're working everything around it. It better be good, and hopefully they're walking away with some nugget.
Absolutely. Like we were talking earlier, this is a real business. This is a real job. And taking it seriously, going through, and right now they need the coaching, and we have a lot of agents that have joined our firm recently because they just don't have that.
Right.
their broker wasn't even talking about the NAR settlement. Their broker was irritated. It irritated them. They were negative about it, and they just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Which is a mistake.
Well, it's death right now.
Yeah.
To me, you're just, if you could disagree with it or not like it or whatever.
That's where we're at right now.
But
the business changes. You got to roll with it. Good agents, good leaders in any market cycle, we find a way to make business happen and take care of the client.
Well, I think Ant Stroud said when I had him on here a couple weeks ago, it's really agents on the ground that are going to set the tone, because we're the ones doing the Instagrams, we're doing the reels, we're going to set the tone for what really the clients, the buyers, the sellers, what they're going to get, and other agents seeing your attitude towards the whole thing. So, you take it which way you want. But I think if you go more with the glass half full, hey, this is our challenge, but we're going to, come out this way. It's going to be better on your clients. It's going to make your consultations a lot easier, just having that different attitude.
You're exactly right. Being intentional with your energy and understanding the rules.
Right.
I think we were talking earlier before we even started, like how so many agents are kind of making up their own rules about it right now.
I went to several meetings or trainings, masterminds, whatever you want to call, where people were talking about it. And that's why I had to have David Heekin on a couple weeks ago. And we tried to get as many of these questions covered, because there is so many people that have taken parts of it and blown them up bigger than they need to be. And then, there was a big discussion on open houses. At what point you have an unrepresented buyer coming in? At what point do you become their representation?
Oh, okay,
When do you, as Florida realtors use the term working with, when you become
crossing the threshold or something like that. Yeah, I mean, the rule is if you're, it's not required to sign a buyer agreement when you attend an open house.
Yeah. I
think open houses are going to become they've always been a great way for agents to show their value, to generate leads. So I think it's going to be a bigger thing now, because we're actually already seeing it, because an agent shared this at our sales meeting a couple weeks ago, that people are going to open houses and they're shopping for realtors, because if they're going to sign,
it's a casual way of doing that, right?
It's almost like going to a showroom in a way, like test drive. Like, if I'm going to have to sign a buyer agreement, which you're going to have to,
right?
I want to sign with a good one. Who has the listing market share? Who has the listings?
Who's the influencer in that neighborhood?
Well-dressed? Who's a good communicator? Who followed up with me?
Yeah.
Who didn't push me and sell me?
That's great advice right there. I didn't think about it that way, but you're right.
Open houses are huge, and so many agents don't value them. Right now, open houses are going to be tremendous for agents to lean to.
Because there are people out there who don't want to sit down and technically have an interview and tell the agent, okay, well, we'll call you if we make our decision. They don't want to have that, but they can walk into an open house with no pressure and just have a conversation with you.
Absolutely, and ask the right questions. Again, this is the relationship business. They're going to work with someone that they know, like, and trust. And if you're in flow, then you're going to have the opportunity to get that business.
You used a term a few moments ago, making yourself visible between transactions. Expand on that.
I think so many agents, social media is such a huge part of our business right now.
And will continue to be.
Will continue to be. 100%. I think you need to be visible on social media platforms in between your deals. It can't just be when you have an under contract or a closed. People want to know about your family. They want to know about your lifestyle. Like, we're selling the lifestyle. You go into your favorite lunch spot or coffee shop in your neighborhood with your family, and you guys are sitting outside. It's a beautiful moment. We don't think about it, but like, the things you do in the present, that's what sells. That's what connects people to you.
The authenticity.
The authenticity piece. You've got to be visible. And if agents ever get in a rut, if you're, we have really strong listing market share. So and our agents are so willing to share them. Like, please post it, share it. You can share another agent's listing and talk about it. Go out there and do a preview and do a video about it. And maybe you're having a slow month. You can put that content out there in between your deals, which will help you grow your business. Might be a conversation you have on the weekend. Hey, I saw you were in, you had that, you were in San Marco and you were videoing that great listing. Tell me about it. just because you were intentional about putting that out there on social media.
Right.
So you have to, again, it goes back to running it's a business. Being it, like, make that on your agenda that day to get that done.
Well, I think, would you agree? I think a majority of people, majority of real estate agents, putting those, we don't know who's watching. You don't know how many people, you may know how many people liked it, but you really, how many people watched it and it resonated with it. And then the fact that you were doing something, maybe it was, that's that person's favorite restaurant.
Right.
And now you have, as small as that may be, you both like this particular restaurant. People bond over stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying like you have to be like videograph your entire life every second. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah. And I mean, sometimes agents can have a period where maybe they don't have a lot of transactions going. You don't, people are, they can quickly forget about you if you're not visible.
Right.
So you have to maintain your credibility.
Right.
And sometimes that means faking it till you make it if you're new.
Yeah.
And then if you're an experienced agent, you're maybe having a little bit of a slowdown, collaborating with another agent going, I love your new listing. Is it cool if I share it? Yes, absolutely. And then maybe you make that a 3-part series or something on Instagram or Facebook or what have you.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that in the meeting I have on Tuesday, I was telling you about earlier, I think it needs to be put out there. You and I think already realize it. Real estate agents, are a part of our housing industry is a big part of our GDP. Housing, because it involves so many people, from the builders to the appliance makers to the movers. There's so many people attached when a house exchange goes on.
I'm glad you brought that up because I actually looked that up before I came here today because I thought we might talk about it. The average expenditures on your typical home sale, and this stat comes from the National Association of Realtors, is between $5,000 and $6,000. Which is crazy, right? Think about Xfinity, the movers, the plumbers, everything. It's a big part of the economy.
Yeah. The real estate agent is the influencer in this deal.
Absolutely.
And we have so many people here being in Florida, people moving from outside the area. You may be the only person they really know. I mean, maybe they have a friend or relative that's nearby or something, but especially if they get moved in from work or for the military, they may not know anyone else.
Yep.
And where you are truly the pillar. I think real estate agents are a pillar in every one of these in the community. They're an influencer if they want to be.
Right.
So there are people that they're coming in. They're looking to them for, hey, what is the best restaurant? What daycare should I send my kid to? That type of thing.
You're exactly right. For lack of a better term, so I've heard some people say you're the celebrity of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But, I think you need to be the market expert.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be the neighborhood expert. You have to know, especially if you want to farm your neighborhood, you have to know everything about every listing that's been on the market, closed that year. What's the average price per square foot? How much do they get per square foot on that property? Why is that house worth more than that? But yeah, and that, going back to visibility, you have to put yourself out there. Talk about the market. Talk about the fact that inventory is rising right now. So if you're a seller and you're thinking about maybe listing, towards the end of the year, well, you're gonna have more competition. Putting that conversation out there might be the reason you get a listing now versus 3 months later, because you've got a listing that's kind of in the pipeline.
Right.
Those types of things. And then, I think letting people know that you're working with buyers, which means they're signing buyer agreements. That's not that difficult to do. We're signing them every day. We've always done it, but now, and it's, it's not scary to buy a house right now. You're not going to sign this contract that is going to require you to pay your agent. In some cases, maybe, but in most cases, not.
You said earlier you were having a training recently on the importance of a seller to have buyer compensation.
It was why should a seller offer buyer?
What are some points that you guys just talked about?
Well, it's not required,
right?
And it never was.
Right.
Commission was always negotiable, right? I think there's lots of reasons, Tracy. I think the big thing is, as a listing agent, when we're getting ready to list a property, you want to help the seller understand that I want to cast the widest net. I want to make sure I have the biggest buyer pool out there for your property. I want to get as many people in the door to fall in love with your home. If I do not offer buyer broker compensation, that is going to shrink your buyer pool. I mean, that's just a logistical fact.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to offer buyer broker compensation. You didn't before. You don't now. but here's why, and talk about those things. There's like hundreds of reasons.
Yeah, well, one was brought up. I forget who. Again, I was listening
Right,
somewhere.
you do a lot of
I'm always
podcasts.
taking in information.
You're
So
becoming
sometimes,
the podcast king of Northeast Florida.
yeah.
And beyond maybe.
But
in the future.
I was over at Landmark. We were at a training, and someone brought up the point. The key point is a lot of times the sellers are just looking at what they're netting out.
Sure.
And so whatever happens, a compensation or whatever, hey, I don't care wherever that goes. I need this much to walk away.
You're exactly right. I mean, you could break it down for a seller, their monthly expenses. How much is your mortgage, your taxes, your pool? The average days on the market in this neighborhood is 3 months. Let's multiply that by 3.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we offer buyer broker compensation and get this thing sold?
Sold quicker.
And I also think, too, a lot of sellers out there are going to be buyers. So let's think about this for a second. If you're going to be a buyer, and you want to get into this neighborhood, maybe you're doing a move-up purchase, and a home hits the market and you love it, and let's say there's multiple buyers, so it's a multiple offer situation. If you have to, and they're not offering buyer broker compensation. So if you are a buyer in that scenario and you have to pay your realtor, who this is a person you've worked with a couple times, you trust this agent, this you're going to work with, their fee is whatever their fee is, right? Which is negotiable. If you have to pay your agent, could you be as competitive in that situation with that offer? Are you going to be potentially at a competitive disadvantage because now you have to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to pay your agent? I can't make an offer over asking now because I have to pay my agent. So from a logistical competitive standpoint, you're at a disadvantage. And I think as a seller, you don't have to offer buyer broker compensation, but if you do, I think that makes your listing more competitive.
Yeah.
I think more people are going to want to see your property. Some buyers out there, if they have to pay their agent, they may just say to their agent, not because the agent didn't show it to them or filtered it out. They may just say, well, geez, it's, your fee is 3%, which I want you to earn, whatever your fee is. We'll skip that house because they're not offering buyer broker compensation. That happens. And that's the buyer making that call.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't want to list your house. We want to sell it.
In your discussions on that buyer broker, because obviously one of the things they could tell you, say, yeah, if there's no offer, we move on to the next house. I mean, a buyer could give you those orders. Is there a subtle way are you guys talking about having that conversation with your buyer when you're signing that buyer broker agreement?
I mean,
where are you at and able to compensate type of thing?
I think you need to be transparent. I think the best agents are good communicators.
Yeah.
And I think, now we are having lots of conversations with agents, some good, some not so good. Are you offering buyer broker compensation? Yes or no? Since some agents are like, we'll make the offer.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a listing agreement. In your listing agreement, are you offering, it's a yes or no? And if it's a yes, what is the percentage? And if it is a yes, which sometimes it's not. That's okay. We'll work through it. There's a seller's broker to buyer's broker compensation form. And so, our agents are, if they're offering buyer broker compensation, which a lot of them are, to be honest, we have that signed on the front end. It's there. It's in the loop, ready to go. And we even put those on our website so the agents can download them. So we believe that is the most transparent and efficient way to market that property.
So in one of these trainings masterminds I went to, one of the questions was, well, if and I'm just going to use these hypothetical, we'll use the Patty Ketchum, the bananas, right? If they're offering 10 bananas on the buyer, the seller says, we'll supply 10 bananas to the buyer broker. But on the buyer broker agreement, they say, hey, we want to be compensated 6 bananas. Okay, well, there's 4 bananas left over because you can't get paid more than what the buyer broker agreement allows you to do. And it was this whole thing. It's like, why? So the question was, what does the selling agent, the listing agent, what do they do with the leftover 4 bananas?
Depends on that situation.
But my thing is like, well, hold on a second. Let's turn that back a little bit. First of all, the buyer's agent, and you agree or disagree with me or how you think maybe change it, as if you're representing the buyer, you're making that first phone call. Hey, we want to come see the house, blah, blah, blah. Are you offering any compensation? That question should be out there. And the seller, to me, in working collaboratively, says, yes, my seller has put aside 10 bananas. Okay, great. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Maybe they really like 15 bananas, but 10, they're willing to accept that. move on and get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, commission is negotiable, right?
Right.
I mean, if the seller is not, and that's in bold in all of our agreements now, commission is negotiable and not set by law, which it never was. Okay, but I think if a seller is not offering buyer broker compensation, that's okay, but don't shoot the messenger. Because we're going to get offers on your property, and guess what's going to be with the offer in most cases?
Yeah.
A seller to buyer's broker compensation agreement, because the agent's going to ask you to pay.
Yeah.
We have a buyer agreement, we have our fee, and then we have the fee that the buyer would pay if they were going to be the ones paying for it, and we're very transparent about it. That's always how we've done it, so that's not been new to us. And because we have really strong listing market share, and let's be honest, we're not the cheapest option out there. There's always been flat fee brokers and all those things. They've always been there. When I got in the business 21 years ago, they were there.
Yeah.
And some sellers decide to go that route. That's okay. That's fine.
They probably don't. Many. I wonder what their actual capture rate, what they're using in the second time on some of those.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends.
Because you would think everyone would be feeling they're going to take over the market because they're only doing it for 1% or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the seller believes in you, they see that you market your properties, they see that you're good at follow up. You had a process. When you showed up, you asked the right questions. You asked them what they were looking for in their realtor. You showed up. You had a professional plan. Not that you sat there and did like a presentation, but you had a consultation with them. You didn't just email them comps and then a listing agreement and then show up with a photographer. Like, you actually put in the work. They're going to pay your fee because they believe in your value, and that fee is negotiable.
All right, I want to finish up, just give some current things that you're doing from coaching the agents, individual agents that are coming to you with some different challenges. Maybe you could think of a few people whether you're dealing with them right now, but just recently, maybe the last 6 months, that they came to you with some challenges, and then what advice or coaching did you give them, and hopefully got a positive response?
Sure. So I always want to find out from the agent, what are 2 or 3 things in the next 12 months that you want, like, in your business? How do you want to grow?
Are many of them coming to you, or are you doing regular meetings that uncover some of these things? And you're like, hey,
sure,
I can help you. Let's do this.
So for the agents that I hire, I always one-on-one coaching is something I offer as a broker. I allocate, because I'm a non-competing broker, so I don't sell. There are brokers out there that sell. I don't. I haven't sold since 2016. And so my main focus is helping the agents, supporting the agents, growing the office, things like that. So very early on in the conversation, generally at our interview, when they're researching brokerages and taking a look at Berkshire Hathaway and interviewing me, and I'm interviewing them, we're talking about coaching, and it's something that I offer. And generally, a new agent, we have a robust development program for new agents. Once they get through that training, which is about 30 days or 3 days a week, then they'll start one-on-one coaching with me, because they have to learn the basics. They have to know how to set up a loop, fill out the contract. I can't, I do it sometimes, but it's difficult for me to sit there for an hour and walk them through a beginner thing. We have staff that helps them do that. So let's get the basics.
I assume
down.
you modify this to the level of experience of agent that's coming in.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Top producing agents, some prefer the group thing, but most of them are better in one-on-one coaching, because they're all different. Every single agent has to be coached differently. You have agents out there that, newer agents sometimes they struggle with confidence. We know they struggle with competence, because there's a lot they don't know. Some are really confident and ready to go, and I've coached some agents to be Rookie of the Year, for a company, which is always awesome. So kind of understanding, I have to get to know them and understand who they are and what they want their business to be. Then I can coach them. It's almost like, you can't treat something before a diagnosis. You have to figure, that's malpractice, right? You have to figure out, like, what is their pain. If it's an experienced agent that I recruited from another brokerage, if we've come that far and they've signed with us, I know what their pain is because they've told me.
Right.
So we're going to start coaching on that and get them back on track.
Do you find a lot of the agents, even ones coming from other brokerages, often don't, they don't know what they don't know, but sometimes don't know actually what they need, because everyone does this business differently. Berkshire Hathaway is doing it different than the other brokerage, but every agent that you have is also doing their business, gets their business from different places and so forth. How do you draw that out of them, what they truly need?
you gotta ask questions. You gotta show them that you care. I mean, some agents, I have a lot of top producers in my offices. Right, we've got some really strong producers, and some of them may not be the most coachable. Not because that's a bad thing, because that's just who they are.
Right.
They're a power personality. So how do I coach them? I'll sit down. We'll go to lunch sometimes. We'll go to coffee, and I'll just like hear about their business, hear about their deals, and then like, what are you struggling with right now? Sometimes it might be helping them get a transaction coordinator or an assistant or something like that. But yeah, they're all different. You have to ask the questions. Noticing their business. So like I'm always all over our listing inventory, and when someone gets a new listing, whether it's a new agent or an experienced agent, I'm going to share it in some way on our Instagram, on Facebook, or whatever. I'm going to throw them shout outs in the office. We celebrate our agents monthly. We do monthly awards, and so if a top producer had a really good month, we're going to celebrate that. I'm going to ask that agent, well, how'd you get there that month? Like what was going on that month where you closed 6 million?
Right.
Can we talk?
Or did you do something 90 days ago that caused this?
How'd that happen?
Yeah.
And I could share that with the group. Then the new agents are going to eat that up. And then that agent that maybe isn't as coachable but needs that lift, they feel that you're paying attention to them, that you're appreciating them. Offering them, when I find out a new great thing, like we've got this new great resource that we're rolling out, and maybe it's not rolled out to the other agents yet, I'll go, hey, check this out. This is coming. Here's how this can help you with your listings or your marketing or your video or whatever. So being a good communicator, I think, is important, and sharing what we're doing, and asking them what you can do to help. Hey, what can I do to help you this week? Is everything, you weren't at the sales meeting on Tuesday. I just want to make sure you're good. What's going on?
All right. So what has been, you've been coaching agents for a long time. What was your greatest coaching challenge? If when someone came with you with something like, and you just literally brought them out of the weeds. You've had to have done that to several people by now.
Yeah. There's a lot of win stories there.
Yeah.
And I'm just not the kind of guy that like toots his own horn. That's not my thing.
Right. But you're happy for them that you were able to be part of that journey, because I want someone to resonate. Someone that's out there right now is in the weeds, and I want, if you could share some.
So a couple things. I think helping them understand that, we manage the process of these transactions, but we don't control the outcome. And so many agents, they if a deal falls through and they're like wrapped up in that deal, and God forbid they need that deal to close to like pay their mortgage or something, but they can take on all that emotional stress on themselves, and they're so depressed, and they're crying, and they're in their sweatpants all day, coming to the office at 5 p.m., to print something. I'm like, so helping them understand that like this business is hard. A lot of what we do is dealing with other personalities, and understanding that you cannot control other people. You cannot change the way they feel. You can just help them. If they're a power personality, you have to kind of lay it out for them so they can make the decision. Don't tell them what you think they should do. You're going to butt heads. There's a lot of wins about, because Berkshire Hathaway, we're a really big brand, and people expect the best from us. So we have the highest average sales price in Northeast Florida. We have really strong market share. In fact, I've got those numbers too if you want them. 831 million closed year to date. Through July, which is number one in Duval, Clay, St. Johns County. So when people hire us, they expect the best.
Right.
So helping people get those deals to the closing table and navigating tough personalities is something that I do a lot. There's a lot of wins there. We do some deal doctoring, and I get pulled into transactions, and sometimes it's like, all right, let's get the client on a conference call. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And I can help them, explain the contract.
Because there's a lot of anxiety. You and I can have that conversation pretty easily. We just bite the bullet and do it. There's others that have a lot of anxiety over that.
You're exactly right. The client has anxiety. Managing anxiety is a big part of our job, not only with the client, but also ourselves. And clients can feel that if you're anxious, and that's that's a natural emotion. Like, it's okay to be vulnerable and be like, man, I'm really scared about this opportunity. Like, help me with it. So helping them get that. Ultimately, like when an agent comes to me and they're competing for a listing and they really want it, and I help them with the pricing, I help them with the marketing proposal. We sit down, we block an hour, we get it done. They go on there, they go, I got the listing.
Yeah.
And we're high-fiving. That's an awesome feeling.
Yeah.
I love that. Because at the end of the day, we talked about this, listings are great, right? Helping buyers get to the closing table, we share a lot of wins and gratitudes in our office too, at our sales meetings. And sometimes it's, my granddaughter was born this weekend, and celebrating that. But from a coaching standpoint, it's such a moving target.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to answer that. But I just enjoy, helping them get to that next level in their business. For a lot of agents right now, it's maintaining a vibrant business. We analyze the market. We analyze the market share from the company level. We also analyze the business of our agents. We have different, programs that we use. And I might tell an agent, look, like, I've noticed your business is kind of doing this. We need more of that steady. So what can we do to do that? And then coaching them to that place where their business is more steady.
Right. Which relieves a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. So a lot of win stories there.
Yeah. I am done with Mike. Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't talked about?
I don't think so.
I appreciate it. We've been going about almost an hour and 20 minutes. Yeah, we got a lot in there. There was
Anything
a lot.
else you want to ask?
Yeah. No, I mean, we could probably go on for a couple hours. Because I could always, because we could sit here and really dig in. Because, but I think anyone listening at this point, I mean, Josh, you have a track record. I think you have the conversation we have really got across what your ideology is, and there's many great agents coming out of your office. As several of them were bragging about you. Call those agents. Ask them what's Josh all about, and then go and have a meeting with you. If you're and I think that having the, like you said, a lot of them need that coaching, and a lot of these brokers aren't engaged enough. Although you haven't been producing, you're in the grind with them.
I get in the I get in the dirt, in the mud with them, because I care, because I want to, and
Well, I don't think you'd be successful if you weren't. You have to be. I think some people are like, oh, it's a competing broker. Okay, well, at least he's still taking deals. And I know some non-competing brokers that are very involved, whether they're involved and they're bringing information back, they're involved in EFAR, where they're very involved in the real estate business and to stay cutting edge. There's other brokers, I know, they said, oh, I got a management job now, I can kick back, I don't have to sell anymore. Well, no, now you have to sell the people that you're leading. You have to sell them all the time. Yeah.
I mean, there's one thing I've noticed about real estate, early on, is it's like there's so many different shapes and sizes, so many different models out there, and it's not that they're bad or good. There's just different models.
Yeah.
And so I think this has been a really good conversation. I appreciate you reaching out and having me on.
I appreciate.